Now let's start with Libya. What do you do with a crisis of this magnitude?
Well, normally about 95% of what you do has to happen before the disaster. And the big problem in Derna and the environs is they didn't do most of that. So you kind of have to make it up as you go. There are many pieces to a disaster like this. First of all, there are collapsed infrastructures that have to be replaced. There was no working hospital in Derna. So, for example, they had to take over a building and turn the rooms into hospital rooms. I mean, that's how weak the infrastructure was in Derna for reasons that go back decades in Libya and Gaddafi's feud with the town and that sort of thing. That you have to coordinate these international groups coming in. I think 2 of the 7 access roads to Derna are open or open enough to get people in. But I was in discussions yesterday about sea access and how to get things in through the sea. Libyans are resilient. They're banding together and doing what they can do. And the nature of a flood is different from an earthquake, which we'll get to in a minute. But usually in an earthquake, you have all kinds of complicated injuries that happen and things that go on, risks that go on, aftershocks for weeks and weeks. Whereas in a flood, usually what happens is that initial disaster, but then not as much afterwards that you have to deal with. Now, the death toll, as you were introducing, went up officially to 6,000. We have 10,000 people missing, and we have a lot of work to do to just deal with the death and destruction and the injuries that we will have, which, again, won't be as extensive as Morocco, but will have to be dealt with, and then a massive recreation of infrastructure project. And I expect in both disasters, there's going to have to be a relocation of populations rather than just rebuilding. And if I can just add one more point, communications is key. And communications infrastructure in Libya is just not there. So they're going to have to get that up to, get that up and going to communicate to the people what they need to do.
Now, let's turn to Morocco, where the quake has killed so many people, wiped entire villages. What's next for survivors? So, just 50 kilometers from the epicenter, you have 800 villages. We've been mapping this in our relief efforts at the organizations I'm working with, many of which are still inaccessible. So the first thing you have to do is gain access to these incredibly remote villages, many of which already didn't have running water and electricity and didn't have good communications. And now that's been completely knocked out. So the Moroccan army and population has been valiantly trying to do things, but the magnitude of this spread over these 800 villages within 50 kilometers, and we have deaths out to 200 kilometers. Then you're talking about thousands of villages that need to be accessed and need, food, water, shelter, and again, getting back to the Libya thing, relocation of populations. Where do you put them? Down in cities and hotels and adjacent towns. There's a huge humanitarian logistical problem that needs to go on here. Both countries need to take in a lot more international assistance. Well, I was going to still ask another question, but we're running out of time. I wonder why Morocco turned down some of the country's aids. But okay, maybe a quick question to that. Can you answer that? Why do you think they turned it down?
So the short answer is Morocco has prickly relationships with a number of countries like Algeria and France, and they accepted aid from countries that they have better relations with right now. But Morocco needs and has an opportunity to improve its political relationships by accepting aid from those countries. So hopefully they'll change that decision in very short time.